Captain James Rivera settled into seat 12F, adjusting his olive green jacket as his 8-year-old son Daniel strapped in beside him. The afternoon flight from Denver to Atlanta was crowded with business travelers and families returning home after Thanksgiving. James ran a hand through his dark hair, still feeling the weight of leaving the Air Force after 15 years. But Daniel needed stability. Since Elena's passing 2 years earlier, it had been just the two of them. His son needed more than sporadic video calls from overseas deployments. "Dad, look at those jets," Daniel murmured, pressing his face against the window as they taxied past military aircraft in the distance. James smiled, recalling his own childhood fascination with planes. "Those are F-22 Raptors. Son, the most advanced fighter jets in existence," he explained. A woman across the aisle glanced over with interest. She appeared to be in her late 30s, with blonde hair tied back, wearing a professional Navy blazer. She had been working on her laptop but now closed it and leaned forward. "Excuse me?" she said politely. "I couldn't help overhearing. Are you familiar with military aircraft?" James nodded modestly. "I have some experience, yes. I'm Rebecca Walsh," she continued, extending her hand. "I'm a journalist with Aviation Weekly. I'm working on a story about modern air combat pilots. Would you mind sharing your connection to the military?" Daniel's eyes lit up with pride. "My dad was a pilot. He flew the really fast planes." James placed a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "Daniel, remember what we discussed about not bothering other passengers?" "Oh, he's not bothering me at all," Rebecca said warmly. "A pilot? That must have been incredible. What did you fly?" "Mostly F-22s for the past 8 years," James replied simply, his calm confidence reflecting the mastery of one of the world's most challenging professions. Rebecca's eyes widened. "F-22s? Those pilots are the elite of the elite. Only about 180 pilots can fly them?" "Something like that," James confirmed, slightly uncomfortable with the attention, but appreciating her aviation knowledge. Their conversation was interrupted by the captain over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, Air Traffic Control has requested that we hold our position for a few minutes due to military traffic conducting training exercises in the area." Through the windows, passengers began pointing as 2 sleek F-22 Raptors appeared, flying in perfect formation about 1,000 feet above. The aircraft moved with the fluid precision that only came from countless hours of training. Daniel pressed his nose against the window again. "Dad, they look just like the ones you used to fly." An older man in the row behind leaned forward. "Son, did you say your father flew those planes?" "Yes, sir," Daniel replied proudly. "He was really good, too. He has lots of medals." James felt a flush rise in his cheeks. "Daniel, please, we don't need to discuss this with everyone." Rebecca, however, looked at him with renewed interest. "I apologize for asking, but what was your call sign?" "I've read that F-22 pilots often have distinctive ones." James hesitated. His call sign wasn't something he shared lightly. It carried weight and recognition, sometimes attracting unwanted attention. Yet Rebecca's genuine curiosity, combined with Daniel's expectant gaze, made him speak. "Viper," he said quietly. The reaction was immediate. A man several rows ahead who had been reading a magazine suddenly turned around. His casual button-down couldn't hide a military bearing. "Did someone just say Viper?" he called. Rebecca looked puzzled. "Is that important?" The man unbuckled and made his way back, a mix of disbelief and excitement on his face. "Sir, did you say your call sign was Viper?" James nodded. "That's correct. Major Paul Henderson, F-16 pilot at Shaw Air Force Base," the man said, extending his hand respectfully. "I've heard stories about Viper, the red flag exercises, combat missions over Syria." "You're a legend in the fighter pilot community," other passengers were beginning to notice. James grew uncomfortable with the attention, but Daniel beamed with pride. "What is red flag?" Rebecca asked, curiosity fully engaged. Major Henderson glanced at James for permission before explaining. "Red flag is the most realistic air combat training in the world. Viper holds the record for most simulated kills in a single exercise, 17 enemy aircraft in 5 days. No one else has come close." An elderly woman across the aisle spoke. "Young man, are you saying this gentleman is a hero?" James shifted uneasily. "I'm just someone who did his job, ma'am." No different from any other service member. With respect, sir, Major Henderson continued, what you did during Operation Desert Shield was extraordinary. When those Iranian fighters engaged our reconnaissance planes, you— Major, James interrupted firmly but politely. I appreciate your kind words, but I prefer not to discuss operational details publicly. Daniel tugged at his father's sleeve. Dad, what's he talking about? What did you do? James looked down at his son, seeing pride and curiosity. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that sometimes good people must make tough choices to protect others? Sometimes, son, pilots have to make very fast decisions to keep people safe. It's part of the job. Rebecca had been listening closely. Mr. Rivera, I hope you don't mind me saying, but your name has come up repeatedly in my research on modern aviation heroes. The pilots I've spoken with hold you in tremendous respect. Heroes? James repeated, shaking his head. I'm just a single father raising his son. The real heroes are those who never made it home. His sincerity seemed to quiet the cabin, and more passengers tuned in. Major Henderson took an empty seat nearby. Sir, may I ask why you left the service? Pilots of your caliber usually make it a career. James glanced at Daniel, who was listening intently. My son lost his mother 2 years ago. He needed me home, not overseas 10 months a year. Some things are more important than flying. The cabin fell silent except for the hum of the engines. Rebecca closed her laptop, captivated by the man across from her. That must have been an incredibly hard decision, she said softly. The hardest of my life, James admitted. Flying wasn't just my job, it was who I was. But Daniel is my priority. He's already lost one parent. I wouldn't risk him losing another. Daniel reached for his father's hand. I'm glad you came home, Dad. I missed you when you were gone. James squeezed his son's hand, feeling the familiar lump in his throat that came every time Daniel mentioned missing him during deployments. The captain's voice came over the intercom again. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been cleared for takeoff. Flight attendants, please prepare for departure. As the plane began taxiing, Major Henderson stood. Sir, it's an honor meeting you. If you ever want to return to the cockpit, even as an instructor, I know many who would jump at the chance to learn from you. James nodded politely. Thank you, Major, but my flying days are behind me. As Henderson returned to his seat, Rebecca leaned over again. Mr. Rivera, I know you value privacy, but would you ever consider sharing your story? Not classified details, but your perspective on service, sacrifice, and what it means to be a hero. People need to hear voices like yours. James considered her as the plane lifted, the ground falling away. Through the window, he could see the F-22 still training in the distance. Maybe someday, he said finally, but right now, my most important mission is right here beside me. Daniel looked up with adoring eyes. Dad, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. James felt pride and responsibility swell in his chest. Then be kind, honest, and always put family first. The rest will follow. As the plane climbed to cruising altitude, James Rivera, the man known as Viper, held his son's hand and watched the clouds drift past, knowing that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism don't happen in the sky, but in quiet moments where love takes precedence over glory.